So, just picked up a bunch of truck parts. I got spark plug wires, distributor cap, distributor rotor, fuel filter, and fuel injectors. So, gonna get started, getting this thing hopefully running how it should. Gonna wanna take my single nut off to get access to the throttle body. And then just gonna go ahead and pop this off the studs. Set it over here. I just leave that flexes in the middle so I can just set it like so. And then I'll go ahead and get to the throttle body. Alright, so since I'm dealing with fuel and electrical, I'm gonna go ahead and pull the negative terminal off to avoid any possible issues. On the terminal so it ensures you won't make any contact with the battery. Squeeze the top, pull it right off. Squeeze the top, pull it right off. Pull this guy off. It's nice to give yourself a little extra room by pulling that little thing off. Just pull the little rubber piece off of the top of the injectors and safely store them both. So it looks like there's 8 Torxes, maybe 9. They're T20s, so I'm gonna go ahead and grab my T20 on a 1/4 inch ratchet and I'll be right back. Here's my T20 on a 1/4 inch ratchet. Alright, so just pulled all those out, but I noticed that these three bolts were longer than the rest. So just make sure you know which 3 are longer than the others, because when you go to put it back together, if you put one of these in the long hole or one of these in the short hole, it's not going to work how it should. So just make sure you keep track of your long ones and your short ones. Next, what we're going to want to do is this piece splits in 2, so there's a top portion that pops off the bottom and then encapsulates the injector. So once I get this top piece out, I'll be able to pull both my injectors out and get them swapped. Gonna tap very lightly, try and break it free. Now that I have this off, I'm gonna unbox my new injectors and get all the gaskets. I'm gonna have to scrape all this gasket off of both the throttle body and this upper piece. Here's the piece I just removed. As you can see, some of the gasket decided to stay on this side and part of it decided to stay on the throttle body. So got myself a razor blade and I'm gonna go ahead and start scraping all this gasket off. Here it is, pulled that gasket off, got all scraped, kind of got that guy wiped off too, so it's looking a lot cleaner and definitely a little more ready to go back on the throttle body. Still quite a bit of gasket in the throttle body, so I'm going to go ahead and get that scraped off. I used the vacuum to pretty much suck all of the excess gasket bits out. Now that it's all scraped off, I'm gonna go ahead and pull my injectors out and then clean the inside of those barrels. There she goes. If you can see that little lip I just put my screwdriver under there, put my thumb on top, and instead of prying, I just pulled up and launched them into my engine bay. So there's the old injectors, here's the new ones. Came with 2 little gasket sets. Everything you need to seal it all back up. Got this grease stuff. They claim it doesn't corrode rubber. So got my big O-rings lubed up, and go ahead and set them in the throttle body or in the injector housing area. There's a little recessed little indent for the O-ring to sit. Get them in there. I just set them in there pretty loosely. I didn't use much pressure. When I put the top bracket on, it should push them into place. Alright, now my next step is putting this gasket on. Much easier with the injectors in place. Gasket goes on. Make sure you put that gasket on before you reassemble. And make sure it doesn't fall off. I am threading these in by hand till I'm confident that they're not going to get cross-threaded. If your fuel filter is just as old as your injectors, like mine, I'd recommend you replace both at the same time, and then you rule out more things, as well as make sure your injectors stay fresh. I'm starting with the middle. So I don't have a torque wrench that's in inch pounds, so I think, or whatever it's in, this is where it gets a little hairy. I think what I'll do is just get them snug. I think it's supposed to be about 20 foot-pounds, so you're really not supposed to get them too tight. Just definitely don't over tighten, because this piece does not look like it's the sturdiest. Make sure these are seated right, those rubber deals, and then get your connector back on. And boom, got yourself some new injectors. Now what I'm gonna do is, before I start it, I'm gonna swap the fuel filter out. What I should have done is bled the system dry by pulling the fuse out for the fuel pump and then running it until it died. That would remove all the fuel from the lines, and then I wouldn't have any old fuel. But because I didn't do that, as I recommend you to do, I'm gonna go under and get my fuel pump undone and swapped out. So got this throttle body all assembled. Now I'm gonna go ahead and throw in my AC Delco fuel filter. Keep those injectors clean. So I'm gonna want to get my creeper, and I'll set the camera up underneath. It's on the other side of the frame rail. So I have a wrench that fits on the bigger side, like on the filter, to keep it steady while I unscrew the line. Once I have them unscrewed, I'm gonna go ahead and remove it, get the new one, make sure I don't need to replace any O-rings, and then get it all tightened back up, prime everything and then start it. Sketchy. Once it breaks loose, definitely remove yourself from being directly underneath, because she gonna start spewing fuel. Eye protection is key. Oh, there it goes. Nasty. Looking like a boss. It says flow going that way, and it goes from the fuel pump to the motor, or gas tank, whatever you want to call it. Bummer. So I thread both fittings in by hand, and then I tightened them, snugged them up with 2 wrenches. The flow is going from the gas tank to the motor, so the arrow's pointing to the motor. Now that I have the ejectors and the fuel filter in, I'm gonna take this off the jack stand and then prime the fuel system, get it started, because I'm gonna need this thing mobile in about an hour. Gas cap. There she goes. It's probably not going to start right away because most of the fuel drained out when I disconnected the fuel filter. So I'm probably going to have to let the pump for a couple times. I'll turn the key on and off to the power position, but not cranking. Just to get the pump primed, and then that should send some fuel. It might take more cranks than you're used to, but it will start up eventually if everything was done correctly. Can't fire it up with the battery not connected. Get that fuel pump going. Make sure there's no leaks. Oh. Started right up. We're looking good.